there are transport routes established by the NTA, is that correct? So they are both urban and rural?
Yes.
Then you tender for those?
We tender for some of those.
Okay.
In some cases, in the majority of services that are operated currently, we are done by the state operators, which are Dublin Bus and Bus Éireann,
yeah.
and they're contracted. We are in a position under EU law that we can directly award services to a state operator. So the majority of the services are currently provided by Dublin Bus and Bus Éireann under contract, which is renewed every 5 years.
And in some instances, then you make a call that we'll actually tender these out.
Yes.
So Bus Éireann or Dublin Bus can
tender for those services.
Tender for them, but
yeah.
so too can private operators.
Yes.
And whoever wins the award is provided the bus.
In general, they are, particularly in the urban services. In some cases, in our earlier procurements, we allowed the bus operator to provide the bus. That was part of the contract because we hadn't got into the procurement of the fleet at that time.
No, but I'm talking about the here and now and the situation. So there are, is it fair to say that in a majority of those cases into the future, the NTA will actually be providing the bus?
Yes, because we want to standardise the provision of the bus fleet, as well as all the information and ticketing associated with that. So we feel in order to ensure that we maintain the integration between the services, that it's appropriate that we provide the fleet.
And in terms of the contracts that are being awarded, you have determined what you want in terms of the frequency, the location. So you set out the route, you set out where you want the stops to be, the times that you want that available to be, and then you provide the bus.
Yes.
So the only distinction between the two, or the number of tenders that come in, will actually be cost that they're offering to provide the service.
Yeah, it's what they're going to charge for the provision of
what
the
they're
drivers.
Going to charge you.
Yeah, what they're going to charge.
Because the fares will be the same.
Yes, the fares will be the same. Yeah.
So essentially, it's down to whoever can manage to get staff at a cheaper rate will win your awards.
Not necessarily. It's how whoever provides the most efficient operation in terms of cost and resources. But there are other. Obviously, we look at when we're tendering for any service, there's a quality price allocation. So there's always an assessment of the quality of a tenderer as part of our tendering process.
What does that mean, their track record?
Their proposal and how they're going to manage the services in the future, how they're going to manage the maintenance, different kind of criteria that would be part of the procurement.
But the route is set down?
Yes.
So there's no distinction between, in terms of the frequency or the number of stops. There'll be none of that in terms of the different tenders. Well, the bus is going to be provided by you. So I presume that there's a standard in terms of the servicing. You know, somebody's not going to get an award if they say that we're actually not going to bring the bus in for regular services. So at the end of the day, the only distinction is, I suppose, how much profit the company is intending to make itself and how much it's going to pay its wages.
That's part of a tender process, is when you're putting out a service for tender, you look for the most economically advantageous tender, as with any service provision, and a tenderer will look at the specification and the requirements, and they will put their best foot forward in terms of that tender. But essentially, it's important for us to ensure that what we're obliged to do as an authority is to provide an integrated network of services right across the state. So from our point of view, from the customer's point of view, they shouldn't see any difference in a service that's operated by a private operator or a state operator.
The only difference will be if I get on one bus versus another bus is actually the terms and conditions of the person driving the bus. Isn't that fair to say?
Not necessarily. Tim, maybe you want to
Tim, maybe you could outline whether the NTA has actually examined the terms and conditions of the staff across the different operators and compared them to the state-owned operators.
When we tender competitions currently, we require the bidders to provide us with a range of different quality criteria as well as their price. Clearly the price is a significant part of the overall award, but we ask them how are they going to set themselves up to maintain the vehicles, how are they going to handle customer complaints, how are they going to handle lost property, how are they going to make sure that they adhere to the timetable, what sorts of backup systems would they have around their operational areas, and those are assessed as well as the price element. And then during the term of the contract, we carry out mystery shopping and we use our own information that we receive from the ticketing equipment, from the automatic vehicle location equipment, to hold that operator to the standard that they said they were going to achieve. If they achieve that standard and they beat it, they can have an additional reward. If they don't achieve that standard, they face a deduction. And the basis of those rewards and deductions are exactly the same on the state subsidised operators as they would be on the tendered services.
I have to say I'd appreciate a further briefing on that if you could provide a paper, because it does appear to me that we've privatised essentially and are privatising an increasing number of routes, and the only real impact is the actual terms and conditions of the people.
We don't accept that. The routes are not privatised because, as you said yourself, Deputy, we set out the routes, we set out the fares that are going to be assigned to those routes. We provide the fleet for those routes. Yeah. So in terms of all the differences, is one is a state operator and one may be a private operator. That's the only difference, and that's why we want to ensure that there's an integrated network of services. I suppose
to clarify my own position, if you have a service that was previously being operated by a state-owned company and then it is subsequently operated by a private-owned company, that is actually the de facto definition of privatisation.
No, it's not. That's where you
in my
hand
mind,
over.
I'm outlining what I consider to be privatisation.
What I consider to be privatisation is where you hand over the operation completely of the service without setting out what the specification is, what the fares are. That's what privatisation is in terms of delivery of a public transport service.
This is actually worse because we're actually going so far as to even provide the bus. Everything is the same. The only difference is
it's fully
makes a profit
controlled by the NTA
and how the staff are being remunerated.
It's fully managed and controlled by the NTA in terms of the routes, fares, etc.